So how do you learn to code in the shortest time possible and actually get a job? Most people, when they want to become a software engineer, it is probably because they might have heard that these jobs actually pay really well, or it may be just the fantasy of working on a beach over an internet connection remotely. Maybe it is the possibility of that, or maybe it's just that you don't need to actually do an expensive degree to get a job. You just don't want to pay all that money and get in a lot of student debt. Or maybe it's just that you don't like your current job so much and you just want a career shift and you're looking for a way into the tech industry. Whatever your reason is, I'm glad you're here. So the question is, how fast can you learn to code and actually become a software engineer? Over the past 17 years, in my career as a software engineer, lead and as an architect, and also as a hiring manager who frequently hired other people to build a team and deliver a project, I can confidently say the things that I look for and many others. I can tell you what those are. Based on that, I would say it is entirely possible to get a job as a software engineer, say a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. But there is a caveat: you need an efficient action plan. To be honest, it's not that difficult to learn coding. And I can understand why you would think that it is difficult, because there's a lot of misconception around learning how to code. You need to be good at math, you need to be very analytical, very smart, and all those things. Where in reality, software engineers are not really good at maths. Most software engineers, there are some areas where you need math, but mostly you don't. This misconception is actually further enhanced by all these TV shows that are going around, like nerd TV shows. I blame them. To me, it is entirely possible to learn how to code in a few weeks span. Actually start applying for those jobs that you want. It is a competitive market, I wouldn't deny that. It's not that difficult as you would think. The problem with many beginner software engineers, wannabe software engineers, is that they don't know how to learn. I'm talking about the learning process itself, not the what of it. The thing is, if you don't know how to learn, you end up wasting a lot of time trying to do things that are unnecessary in these early stages of becoming a software engineer. In the beginning, just learning for the things that employers look for to get over that interview stage is enough. You don't need to know everything. With that in mind, we will go through the mindset on how to learn to code efficiently as quickly as possible, the exact steps for you to follow to make the process faster, most importantly, the common mistakes, what you need to avoid and watch out for. How to learn to code efficiently. The basis of any kind of learning is gathering information, applying the information that you just gathered, building or creating something. Once you have a result, reflecting on the result, thinking about how to improve the end result, repeating the process as many times as possible until you get good at it. You need all these three components to effectively learn. You need to watch some tutorials, build something, improve upon it, get more information, apply that improvement, build again, reflect, and so on and so on. Just like you won't become a good guitarist by just watching guitar tutorials, you won't actually become a coder by just watching tutorials. So it's like a circle. Efficiency in learning is actually achieved by reducing the loop time. To start off, you only need to learn those things that are the most important first. With that in mind, you select what to learn. Software engineers in a real-world setting, they mostly use a certain number of features over and over again in different scenarios. Take, for example, a programming language. They don't use the 100% of the programming language features when implementing something. Whatever it is, a programming language or a database technology, if you can efficiently identify that this much to start off with, you can ignore pretty much the rest of it and just focus on learning that subset. You may have heard about Pareto's principle. It kind of like fits into that. I don't know why it is like that, but from my experience in professional and personal, it is just about that 20% where it's about prioritizing. That's what it is. In addition, learning to code is not a finite thing. And no software engineer says that I have learned how to code and I'm going to do nothing else. It is a continuous process. Every year, every month, every week, there is a new technology coming in. You got to keep up to date with the new technologies. If you don't do that, you get outdated pretty fast. So it's not just learn coding and you're a software engineer. It's a continuous process. Even in other professions, like be a doctor, for example, or an engineer, for example. Usually when you graduate out of the university, it is the things that you learn there pretty much outdated. Once you step out of your college, it's pretty much useless. New technologies are in place in that 3 year or 4 years. So the aim is to get to the job application stage and start attending interviews as quickly as possible. If you find yourself in a position, say if you went to an interview and you find that you lack some knowledge in a specific area, you can always come back and learn it. It's not that getting rejected in an interview it's such a big deal. It is an effort, but it's not a big deal. Next, you need to set time frames for your learning goals. For example, set 2 hours for learning data types, 2 hours for learning loops and conditionals, a week to learn object-oriented principles. Setting time frames like that introduces a certain kind of urgency into learning, and also make sure that you don't actually end up wasting your time. This actually conforms to the Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states that the work expands to fill the time allocated for it. Also, I have found that doing a little bit of every day is far more superior than trying to get a big chunk of learning in one go. Our brains are not designed to do that. They get exhausted after going over the same thing, especially when you don't understand something fully and you try to force yourself. It gets a bit repetitive and you get exhausted. Probably better, especially in the beginning, to learn a little every day. But then again, it depends on your personality. I can't do it. This is why some people find it effective to go for a walk or do something else and come back, continue with that process of learning. Or just sleep and get some rest and continue learning the next day. That is the general approach to learning to code. Now that you know how to learn, you can actually discuss what to learn. If you have made this far and if you are finding this video any kind of useful, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Now coming to what to learn, of course, you need to select a programming language to start with if you want to learn to code. Common recommendations are JavaScript and Python. A lot of people actually recommend Python these days, but my recommendation is take JavaScript. I'll tell you why. Python is a solid advice, but I think JavaScript is better. So when starting out, there is a specific area in programming called web development, which is something that you can easily get into, developing applications for the browser. Usually web applications have two parts, a front end and a back end. Front end is mainly what people see, and back end is actually the logic and operations, which churns the data, make the data into something meaningful. When that data is ready, that is passed on to the front end code to be displayed to the user, the end user, in a meaningful manner. If you learn Python, you still have to learn the front-end technologies, JavaScript and HTML and CSS. But if you learn JavaScript, it can be used for it is both a front-end and it is also a back-end language. And HTML and CSS, a bit of it, you need to learn. How much you have to learn HTML and CSS depends on whether you want to try out a full stack or whether you want to become a front-end engineer or a back-end engineer. You don't have to decide that in the beginning anyway. Most junior developers will be doing full stack programming anyway. And as you gain more experience, you can get into specializing in one area. Remember, you're not trying to plan your entire career right at this second. You're just trying to get a job. Trying to plan out the entire career at this moment would be premature optimization, and I wouldn't recommend it. Also, when you're starting out on platforms like Upwork, where you can actually find freelancing work, JavaScript jobs are more prevalent, like React are more popular over there, and it's probably easier to get a job in that area. Don't get me wrong, there are jobs on Python as well. JavaScript is pretty much in very high demand actually. So we talked about learning first the 20%. To do this, select a crash course that is between 60 to 90 minutes to get an overview of JavaScript. The idea is to limit the time spent. To pick a course, you can either go to YouTube or a platform like Udemy or Skillshare to find some good JavaScript courses. Another recommendation is to actually buy a good book. The good thing about books is that you can refer back to using the index. That is a problem with videos because it is easier to find text in book than finding audio in a video. It's easy to refer back to a book. Plus, reading a book is actually a good habit. Reading code is actually a good habit. Look for courses that has hands-on exercises, ones that you can actually do along. But I would recommend watching the whole course first rather than trying to do the exercise along with the course to get an overview. Don't worry about not understanding everything what is being said in the course. You don't need to take notes or anything like that. That will just slower the process. The idea is to plant seeds of information in your brain to know that will fire when needed. So once you finish the first pass of going through the course, come back to the course and try to do the hands-on exercises there. And it is at this point that you can refer back to the course, not from beginning to end. If the course is indexed, it is easier to refer back to it, as I said before. When you try out the exercises in the book or in the course, you don't necessarily have to refer back to the course itself. Trying to get into the practice of Googling for solutions, either reading Stack Overflow, reading through some of the solutions online, which is practically what most software engineers do anyway. So for example, if you don't remember the syntax of a for loop in JavaScript rather than going back to the course, you can just type in Google, like what is the syntax for loop in JavaScript, and you will get the answer faster. Focusing on logical thinking writing is more important than the details like syntaxes and stuff like that. And now it is actually the time to build your portfolio so that you can present yourself in front of your potential clients. To do that, you need to build out like 2 or 3 projects in the beginning. Don't try to build out an entire application. You can also build out code that will demonstrate your knowledge about certain area that you have learned, which should be more than enough. There's a smarter way to do this. Think of a problem that you actually have and try to solve that using software, which is what I have done in my portfolio projects. One of the hobbies that I have is creating YouTube videos, so I create tools on how to create headlines, YouTube titles. Another idea is to replicate a popular website like a video catalog or something like Netflix. You don't have to build out entire Netflix or Uber, for example. You just need to build out certain functionalities of it to demonstrate what you're doing. Important thing is that you are able to finish the project in 1 or 2 days maximum. Another recommendation is to go on freelancing platforms like Upwork or Fiverr and see what are the projects that are in demand, that are being requested by the people who post projects there, and build a sample version of the project, which you can actually use later if you want to apply for those projects as well. You can also try out some open source projects. Go on GitHub and try to contribute to some of the GitHub projects, open source, popular projects over there, which is actually a valuable thing that you can put in your CV. Fix some bug, very easy thing to do. Submit your code there. Your code may get accepted and then you can put that in your CV. Once you have 2 to 5 projects on your portfolio, it is now time to actually apply for the job. This is probably the most time-consuming part of it all. Time-consuming in the sense you need to talk to the recruiters and go through the process. I would even say go through to some interviews, put yourself through the process and get comfortable with that process. Goal is not to land the job, but to get comfortable. There is also not a lot of pressure on you. It is a great chance to go through the application process and actually potentially identify which areas you lack, you need more information, you lack the knowledge, and improve upon those areas as well. When I attend interviews, I don't actually look for an outcome in the interviews. Although subconsciously I do need that job. It is a weird thing that your brain does, especially when you are already in a job. Looking for other interviews is just experience building. You can do a similar sort of approach without that pressure. One of the problems that you may run into at this stage is that dealing with that feeling of not being ready. Don't worry about it, because even many senior programmers feel it. It is the nature of the industry, because there are a ton of technologies coming out every day, and you can't know everything. So there's always that doubt that I don't know everything, and that feeling of not being ready. It's not just for beginner programmers. I have it, everyone has it, senior programmers have it, architects have it, project managers have it. It's the nature of the industry. Don't worry about it too much. Once you start applying, what do actually the hiring managers and recruiters look for? They mainly hire experienced people, and when looking for interns, they look at their portfolio projects. It is a classic chicken and egg situation. You can't have experience without having a job, and you can't get a job without having experience. But there is a way. There are several ways to do this. You may not necessarily make a lot of money by doing the things that I'm going to propose, but you will gain the experience which will help you land you the job. One of the things that you can do is to go through freelancing platforms like Upwork, where you can help other students complete their assignments, which is what I did when starting out. Put that in your CV, tutoring other students. Also, you could work as an intern. If you are taking something like a gap year, there are work exchange programs, sites like Workaway, like hotels and farms. They need websites built, and you can do work for them in exchange of like accommodation or food, and also travel the world, which is a cool way to do it. You can put that in your CV. Another thing is GitHub, contributing to open source projects. I haven't personally done it. Always ask the question that how can I actually stand out? Again, contributing to open source projects that will make you stand out. The mere fact that your code has been accepted into one of these open source projects gives the hiring managers confidence that, and they think at least that your code must be half decent to be accepted to these projects. What about all the talk about like data structures and algorithms? Personally, I don't feel they are very important unless you're applying for big companies like the FAANG companies, previously FAANG, RIP. I never personally tried. I have tried once or twice, I failed, but it's not necessary. But I'm still here after 20 years in this field, getting paid fairly well as well. It's only the bigger companies that look for that during the screening process. But I tell you, if I do that, my brain starts frying. I can't do data structures and algorithms. In the initial stage, at least you don't require that. You can get an intern job job and then get a basic web development job probably. And then in that process, once you have the job, you can think about applying to these bigger companies and then start learning the data structures and algorithms part of it. Well, that is basically it. Mistakes to avoid. I should probably tell you that as well, because most beginner programmers do it, end up wasting a lot of time. So the number one mistake is going through endless number of courses without actually building or even not completing that loop, going through all three processes, either spending too much time in learning or building stuff rather than not applying for jobs or going through interviews. You have to go through the loop continuously and improve upon it. Otherwise, you're just stuck in one area. It is actually a procrastination technique, thing that we do, just plan endlessly and not act upon anything. The second mistake is to think that you need to be good in math or good in data structures and algorithms. Again, this could be a fear of attending interviews or whatever, but you tend to think that you're not ready and get stuck there. That is the second mistake. And I think those are the two things to look out for. Like anything where you put yourself in a position where you are procrastinating, look out for those stuff. Don't do it. That is all I have to say about how to learn coding the fastest way possible and to actually get a job. Hopefully you have found this useful. So remember, learn, build and reflect as a strategy to learn coding faster. Learn the most important things first. Learn the most useful, helpful and important things first when learning to code. Build a portfolio. So try to think about solving your own problems first. Build experience around freelancing platforms like Upwork or exchange program like Workaway to gain that programming experience. Or even you can try interning. And last but not the least, attend interviews. Build that confidence by going to interviews. If you have enjoyed the video, please give me a like, thumbs up. Also, subscribe if you want to know more about the next video that I'm making about the setup that I recommend for the junior developers in my team. I'll see you in the next one.